Hey, so you are muted, Dr. Fox. We'll start with that one.
Wow. Okay.
Live
I'm not
stream,
going to waste
sorry.
any more time. That's why we need Mitch here. CRPN Central, this is Dr. Fox. Please like, comment, subscribe. Love you guys all. Please support the mission. Welcome onto the stage, Mitch Hilby. Mitch,
Thank you.
thank you so much for being my right-hand man, Farmer Mitch,
Howdy.
saving me. So for all of those of you who are watching this ahead of time, it's awful embarrassing to ask you to subscribe to something with a muted guy. So I do apologize. Mitch, I honestly, I don't think I could have planned that better, but this episode is Burnout. And obviously, I'm going through some right now because I was literally just talking and I was muted, and hopefully everyone still loves me. But Mitch, oh my gosh. For one, we recorded this a year ago. This was episode like number 9. We did this on Mental Health Awareness Month in May 2023. I'm not sure if it's aged too well as far as the content. Like, I wish I had a better mic. I had built-in advertisements, a couple cringy moments there, but wow, the content. I don't know if you had a chance to listen to it.
Absolutely. I mean, always. It's kind of like my job.
Yeah. So what'd you think?
So as always, there's amazing alignment between the two. This one in particular, I think what we end up finding, or at least I have found, is anytime anyone's talking about mental health or burnout and their own struggles or, lived experiences, there's so much connection and everybody's like, oh my gosh, yeah. And the biggest part is just being able to talk about it, right? I loved it. And I think the short that was in the beginning,
the PI one.
Yeah, I mean, that kind of like really helped sum it up. And I don't know what the specific, I spent a little bit of time. I mean, I'm busy today, so I didn't do too much diving, but I couldn't find specific statistics on like the one and done investigators in the industry. I'm sure someone has them out there.
I'll bet you Stephanie does. When Stephanie gets on here, we might ask her about that.
But
we have a second.
I wanted to share though, if we can. So yesterday, our other regular co-host, Lauren Stockwell, was sharing some stuff. It is a 2022 Open Clinica study. 61% of all research staff said they're completely or somewhat burned out.
Wow.
And 52% of the site respondents reported a higher turnover rate than before 2020 as well.
So there's your COVID hitting right now. So now COVID's over, but then the burnout's still there. And I think Jess Thompson called that. Coming on the stage, Dr. Hadi Dinawi. I have to ask, Hadi, what are you wearing? That's so amazing looking.
Well, hello everyone. Nice seeing you again. What am I wearing? This is my African muumuu. I don't know if you can see it well, but anyway, as many of you know, I was born and raised in Ghana, West Africa. So I always revert back to my child ego state to feel like more in a more comfortable zone. So I wear this and I eat plantain. So this is what I do when I'm burnt out. So there you go.
Welcome, Hadi. Welcome. All right, I'm going to bring our superstars on the stage. Dr. Stephanie Abbott, Jess Thompson. I want you guys to be up top here. I'm going to move you guys around here. But okay, Farmer Mitch is in the middle. So nice to meet you all. Thank you so much. This is a year in the making. I can't believe it's been a year since we had this conversation. And I really want to get into this. I've got so much I want to ask, so much I want to talk to. But before we do, since it's been a year, could you please introduce yourselves? And importantly, tell me what is different since this interview a year ago for you. So Stephanie, you want to start?
Okay. Well, thank you so much for having me back and to talk about such an important topic. I think anyone can relate to this. Our industry tends to lend itself to this, to burnout. Quite nicely. So it is nice to come back and kind of have this conversation again and hopefully share some of the things that we've done to transcend it, because coming out of COVID, you're kind of in survival mode, and then you need to get back into a much more normal rhythm and one that's sustainable, and to deal with the burnout that you've kind of been carrying along as baggage. I have been in clinical research for about 23 years now. I have done all aspects of research. I'm a PI. I've done the coordination, the regulatory, pretty much all of it. You end up being kind of the jack of all trades when you're at a site. So that's been me. And during the pandemic, when research and we had to figure out how to decentralize on the fly, we did that. And I also ended up writing a protocol and rolling out a vaccine clinic so that we could get back to normal. So just kind of a lot of craziness. So I really appreciate this opportunity to come and talk about burnout.
Oh my gosh, Stephanie, it's an honor to have you here. And you've told me the stories, and from the interview, it was just everything that you have been through in this industry. I think that it's really powerful that you're coming on here and we're having this conversation.
Thank you.
So Jess Thompson, I think now, are both of our guests in a car? I have to ask. It looks like you guys are both traveling.
I think we are.
We are
going on vacation because you're fighting burnout.
No, I'm waiting for an appointment.
Oh my gosh. Well,
Yeah.
So Jess Thompson, would you go on to introduce yourself?
Yeah, I am so happy to be here. Thank you guys so much for having me. Also, thank you, Mitch, for appeasing my request for the last year and a half of having a Fox and Friends podcast, because I just love that. I just love how we all, are really dedicated to making what we do every day fun in any way that we can, spreading joy, because, that's really, in the world that we live in, those little things are really what save our sanity. So I just really appreciate you guys always keeping things like this joy and fun and all of that at the forefront whenever we're having these conversations, because they are heavy. They're really tough to have. And so a little bit about me. My name's Jess Thompson. I've been in the clinical research industry for about 15 years. Started in a lab, worked at a site from a coordinator, data entry, regulatory, project management, and then into CRO world and sponsor world, and also in those project management roles. And now I have started an association for clinical research project managers after experiencing incredibly bad burnout and having to kind of step away from the pharma role for a while just to kind of heal and work through some of that trauma that I experienced. And now just trying to aid others and helping them find ways that they can manage their projects and their daily lives in a more sustainable way. And then also what you asked, what had happened in the last year, I've also gotten my yoga teacher certification and Reiki training to really start to be able to bring that to more clinical research professionals. And I actually literally 2 weeks after I got back from India from doing my teacher training, Magi had asked me to lead yoga for 2 days at 6 a.m., like 6:30 in the morning. And it was just such a cool moment, because last year, this was one of the first conversations we had in the industry about burnout and mental health and how it was such a stigma. And now to see that, like, I'm being asked to present on mental health in our conversations, or teach yoga, just because people are realizing how important it is. So it's been a really cool year to see the change, that whenever we first started talking about it, we're like, we don't know how people are going to perceive this. And then now it's really starting to be the forefront of conversation, and people are starting to collect data on it, which is so cool.
Yeah. And so back to Fox and Friends. Welcome everyone to Fox and Friends. I have to ask, Mitch, did you intentionally make me, the fox, brush up against your leg in the picture?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah,
I like to keep things fun, like Jess said. So it's even Western themed, because you made so many references to the Wild West in this podcast. So
do you have a hat? You wouldn't happen to have a hat, would you? Cowboy Mitch.
I always have costumes.
There you go. Cowboy Mitch is here. Welcome to CRPN Central Live. Today's episode is burnout. Thank you so much both for coming. Burnout, a huge problem in this industry. If you have been through any form of burnout in this industry, raise your hand. And if you're in the audience, if you can figure out the hand emoji, raise your hand. I think it's safe to say that one way or the other, adulting in this industry results in some form of burnout. I'll be honest, after a while, it gets old, it stinks, and you feel like you are completely depleted. You are a dead battery. And unfortunately, many times you hit that rock bottom dead battery, and then it takes you forever, if you can at all, to recover from that. So first we interviewed, it was first Stephanie. Stephanie, you were the first interviewer on the podcast, and then it was Jess. So we're going to go to Stephanie first. So let's just start out, and you can expand onto what you were talking about from the podcast, or go even further after a year of knowledge and wisdom. How do you define burnout, Stephanie?
Well, I mean, I think it's probably evolved a little bit. The biggest thing, that I experience when I am trying to define burnout is just this ability to get your bearings, to be efficient, to feel like, you can fire on all cylinders, and that you could be fully present. And, Jess, you were talking about yoga and Reiki and all of these things that kind of bring us back to our center, so that we can be fully present. Because when you're burned out, you're lost, and it feels like you can't rest well, you can't perform well. So I guess that's probably how I define it. It's just that ability to, you're just frazzled all the time.
Yeah, total frazzle. Jess, what do you think? Has your definition of burnout changed in a year?
Definitely. I mean, I think, just learning and growing and trying to figure out like what coping mechanisms work for me, and, coaching others through that as well, because I'm always happy to have those conversations. I'm a big proponent of mental health and seeking out those resources as needed. And I think for me, what I have finally realized for my burnout was that I was in constant fight or flight. That amygdala response. So the amygdala is typically like this and closed until you're in one of the responses and it's heightened. And so you're firing on all cylinders all the time. And so when you're in that response, your amygdala is just flaming, right? There's no way to really close it down. And the only really thing that I think for me works the fastest is breathing exercises, because that's the only action that really links the sympathetic and the parasympathetic nervous system to really bring that amygdala back down. So for me, it's really just been learning about myself and giving myself grace in the healing process, because I was actually talking to my therapist today, and I was talking about anxiety, and I'm like, am I ever gonna not have anxiety? And she was like, honestly, that is the hardest thing to treat, because we can work through depression. We can work through PTSD. We can work through some of these coping mechanisms. But when your body is just in fight or flight, just living day to day, that is a totally different situation where you're having to like bring yourself down from that. But also you're panicking, right? You're panicking in that moment. So I think it's just been like a really interesting year, just trying to learn about myself and what works for me, but then what works for others as well. So then I can have those conversations and be a resource to others that are facing this. But for me, I think it's really that just always on, always firing on all cylinders, always in that fight or flight mode, feeling like you're just barely surviving is what my definition of burnout would be these days.
Mm-hmm. And that goes directly with what Stephanie, you said. It's our limbic system. It's our lizard brain. We just fight or flight. Like it fires up. It's the first instinct. And then there are ways that we have to try to get back into the cortex, to try to activate certain parts of our brain to reel us back in. So Stephanie, I wonder, going back to the lizard brain, I know Jess had talked about breathing, get that sympathetic system under control. We can do this. When you are feeling stages of burnout, what methods do you feel help you to get back into that cortex?
So for me, it's use your words. It's finding your words to articulate, because that's what you lose when you're in the limbic system. And when with small children, when you say to them, use your words, and because they're tantruming and they're freaking out, and we do this too. and if I can find my words, and it might be journaling, it might be whatever, and then I can articulate what I'm thinking and what I'm feeling, all of the sudden, the higher my upstairs brain, the cortex is front and center, and the lizard is down in the basement where it should be under these circumstances. So that's one thing that I try and focus on a lot, that seems to really help me, because there's nothing worse when you're right in the middle of a professional situation and your filter is not as great as it should be, and finding your high level words are not coming to you. So to kind of do that reset, to journal, to be able to articulate in words, what I'm feeling, or it seems to be how I can put myself back in control, where I feel less frazzled.
I just had a really interesting light bulb moment, and this was going back to one of my notes that we talked about solutions later, but Jess and Stephanie both said in their interviews that a great way to help to prevent burnout is processes. You got to have processes. Mm-hmm. And it's interesting, in a professional level, those development of processes are almost like the industry's way of using its words.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
To spell everything out in a logical way, so that we're not making decisions on the fly. So that's also, of course, we have to pivot. We have to understand how to change and how to adjust, but at least we have a roadmap. We are not completely lost. We're not like pioneering the path here. We kind of know at least a little bit of a direction. I'll go back to Jess because we want to go back and forth. And I want to let Mitch and Hadi please hop in. I didn't mean to take this over. I'm just so excited about this topic. But Jess, when it comes to that analogy, breathing, stay calm, don't make hasty decisions, use your words, how do all of those wonderful things to help to alleviate burnout also help to prevent burnout in like a process development system?
So let me just first say that although I say breathing is fantastic, in those moments, it is hard. It is hard to pull away and just have that, take a moment, only focus on your breath. So that was one thing whenever I first started this healing journey of people just made it sound so simple. And it's not simple at all. So you really, and I love what Stephanie was saying too, that things that work for her might not be the things that work for me. And I think it's important that if one thing doesn't work for you, to keep exploring, keep having those conversations and see what does work for you. Because also, even in seasons, it may be different. One season of life, it may be that you just need to go lay down and listen to your favorite song on repeat and cry it out. But other times it may be that you need to just get in all the cardio and just turn off that brain for a little bit. So it really just depends. And I think that with routines and processes too, you have to reevaluate those as soon as you start to see some of your triggering behaviors. Or I kind of keep a list, honestly, on my desk of things that I've recognized mean that I'm hitting burnout, or I'm hitting a level of anxiety or depression or something like that needs to be addressed. And it's just something to have a visual reminder of, if I'm not sleeping well, if I'm, not showering as often, if I'm not taking care of myself, those are some of my things. But just being conscious of that, I think, is huge. And, just paying attention to how you feel in specific moments. So I really like what Stephanie said about putting a word to it. I also figure out where it is in my body. If I'm feeling that really big anxiety and stress, and if I feel it in my chest, I know that, this might be a heavier emotion than what might work for breathing, and I need to go take a walk. I need to remove myself from the situation completely. So just really recognizing what you're feeling in that moment, what those emotions are telling you, where you're feeling it in your body, and then seeing how you respond to it. Or even situations, I found one thing that really has helped me is if I'm entering into a conversation or a situation and I'm already anxious, what is that telling me about myself? What is that saying? Is it the situation? Is it a limiting belief that I have? Is it anxiety about what is happening there? So really just trying to be in tune, and journaling is such a great way to do that. But I think that schedules and routines help me a lot with my anxiety and with burnout, because I can schedule in rest. And you don't have to earn rest. I think that is so important to understand. You deserve rest no matter what. That is not something that you earn. That is something that you need. And so scheduling rest into your schedule and making sure that you're taking care of yourself. I know self-care, self-love is always talked about, and probably at this point, people are like, I'm so sick of hearing about it. It doesn't even mean anything. I don't have time for it. But you have to make time for it, or your body will make you make time for it. You have to make time for wellness, or you're going to have to make time to be sick or unhealthy or have a mental breakdown or be completely burnt out. So instead of doing that, maybe recognizing that if you are including these habits and things that are good for your well-being and good for to maintain that level of not being in fight or flight, how much time that's going to save you in the future. Like, yes, it may take 5-10 minutes every day or an hour to walk away from your desk and have lunch and go for a walk. But that means that maybe in 6 months, you're not going to have to take 4 days off of work because you just can't handle it anymore.
Yeah, that's great. I love the concept of really being intentional and identifying those issues and being aware. I know before, I mean, both of you kind of shared some of your journeys as well. And just, I think it was a therapist maybe that gave you the kind of good overview of what that looks like. And it's that road trip where it's like that commute to work, and it's those 30-second increments added every day, and they really build up. And I used to joke, now it's like not funny. It's like, man, I was really in a dark place at that time. But back in my CRA days, I used to joke like so regularly with like other CRAs or, management or whatever. It's like sometimes like I just feel like we're the ones being studied. Like that's how crazy everyone feels working in research. It's like, is this truly like an experiment to see how much I can endure as a human being until I break? Like, and then that should have been right. Like now it's like, this makes sense. Like that's a huge flag at this point. But before it was just like, oh, this is how the industry works. This is what we're doing. So.
No, that's so true. And if you look at job descriptions, like after experiencing like extreme burnout and having to go through like intense therapy to work through it, if you read job descriptions these days, you're like, you are literally telling me that I'm going to need a therapist just to get this paycheck.
Yeah. Well, that's another thing you guys brought up too, was like that, how they have those, a lot of companies, they have those. It's like, you'll pay for a therapist to be remotely accessible, 8 days a month or something, or a year, just so you can get back to work as quickly as possible. Right.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. And so just like what you were saying, Jess, and this is something I made obviously I started this whole show on mute. So I'm going through some very big challenges right now, but and I know it sounds so weird, but guys out there, one of the things that really helps me to, I don't know, control my burnout or at least feel a little better is to shave. If you look like a lumberjack and you've got a neck beard, then maybe it's time like taking care of yourself, right? I mean, shaving is one thing that we can actually control. We make that choice to take care of our bodies by shaving our face. Mitch, maybe, but you've got the cowboy thing going on.
Yeah. Well, no, I do want to jump on that actually, because I think it's more a matter of being something you feel like you can control when everything else feels like it's out of your control. I actually did that after Magi. Magi was great. I didn't go to yoga. I probably should have, apparently, but it was a 2-week span, really stressful, really overwhelming, a lot of like positive overwhelming aspect of my life, but still, overwhelming nonetheless. It hits the same emotionally. And when I got home, I'm like, I need to do something to shake it up. I need to change. And I shaved, and it was weird. And my daughter hated it like always, but here we are. We're back.
That's the female equivalent of getting bangs. That's pretty much what it is.
So
based
yeah,
on
go ahead, Hadi.
Yeah. I mean, I love what you all have said. Jess, whatever you said resonated with me. Thank you, Stephanie. One thing I did is that I actually started letting my hair grow. I always actually used to have a buzz haircut. And just a couple of years ago, I thought like, no, I need to change. But anyway, I mean, when that was, that happened after COVID. But when it comes to me, besides like, wearing whatever I feel like, it's comfortable for me, or if it reminds me of my childhood or special memories. Jess, what I got into recently is sound therapy and color and light therapy. So I have those, floor lamps with a remote control that changes the light color. So it depends on whether which mood I'm at or I'm in, that time. I can, yeah, I mean, sort of, right?
Red? That's not good.
There you go. There you go. There you go. I have the same remote control. There you go. So I mean, yes, I read up a lot on the effect of color therapy and light therapy, and I found it to be really some kind of effective for me. And what I started doing a couple of years ago is that I have a drum and I chant. And this goes well with what you said about having this yoga certification. And with yoga, they do some like to clear the chakras, like you say, O or A or E or whatever. I mean, there are some sounds that you can actually chant to clear up some chakras. So I'm into this right now. It's like it's helping me move forward with whatever issues I'm facing. We're all burnt out, to be honest with you. I don't think there's anyone not burnt out, especially after COVID. So we really have to build in this, as you said, as a routine into our schedule. Be proactive and not reactive. That's what I wanted to add.
Mm-hmm. We've got a comment here, and it says LinkedIn user. So if we know who this is, I'd love to call them out. Absolutely, 100%. We need to pay attention to the signs of burnout at work. And I love the term we. We should define we. And this was actually in the interview. There are some certain corporate band-aids that are put on this industry to, like you said, we'll offer you therapy in our job description to help you get through things. Instead of we'll change the processes to just eliminate the burnout altogether. Huge deal. So Stephanie, I know this is huge for PIs, but as a PI in this industry, we have been screaming that our PIs are an endangered species, that we're hitting them too hard, that we're not paying them enough. Has it improved at all since we started saying anything?
Not yet. It's gonna take a bit, I think. And I work with a bunch of them, and I have some of them that I've worked with for a long time that are just saying, I think I'm gonna need to take a step back, like by the end of the year, because like within our clinic, we got a brand new EMR. And so you're learning that, and you're learning all new workflows. And then, but you still have all of this, all of these patients and all of these studies, and you have a separate, eSource CTMS system that they're having to log into. And, if you work with a site network or whatever, they aren't really, they use clinical integration as a buzzword, and not, and they're not really, you give them feedback and they're not really tuned in or really care what that means from the standpoint of like helping, the PIs and the investigators do research as part of seeing their patients. Not that this is a whole nother job that you're going to have to heap on, or why don't you skip that bathroom break and sign this paperwork, that type of a thing. Those are the things that, that become challenging. And if you can do it correctly, and there's a lot of workflows that we've refined to make it better, then it will get better. But under most circumstances, it's really, really hard to have people know, understand, or care when you say, don't mess with my workflow, because it makes it really hard and I burn out.
Yeah, Stephanie, you mentioned in the original podcast too about using your resources wisely. Mm-hmm. And recently I had a friend share with me this spoon theory metaphor. Mm-hmm. So it's more people with chronic illnesses. They have this concept of how you can help explain what your limitations are and where your energy is, and when you're communicating with other people. So you have this like supply. Each day you start with a supply of spoons, and every activity costs a certain amount of spoons, which are like your energy until you're used up. Mm-hmm. And there's like this invisible depletion aspect to it too, because we can't see, right? I don't know how someone at an office is feeling or where they're at energy wise, and how much energy they need to use to get through a certain task or anything throughout the day. But I really saw that as like, well, that's the most important resource, right? When it comes to our resources, it's our personal energy and what we're exerting to get things done. And like the less you have to give, the harder it becomes. And it's that snowball effect that starts happening too.
Yeah. And boundaries. I mean, that's probably the hugest way to protect your spoons is boundaries. And, you know, I'll have staff that will just decide they're going to throw something on my schedule. Oh, well, I have a patient that could come in. Well, there's a big window and there's all kinds of things. And it's like, and the staff may rotate through. So they have early staff and late staff. Well, I will come in at 7 and oftentimes they'll be like, oh, but so we need you to administer drug at 7:30 a.m. but oh, there's another patient at 5:30. Okay, could we not do that on the same day? You know, so that you're blocking, you know, I've found ways to block on my schedule and to say, if you're going to send me this, you know, calendar invite without asking me, I'm going to decline it. And you're going to have to like reschedule that patient. And that's so hard to do because we're so wanting to please, you know, all the time. And to be able to like take a walk at lunch, to eat my lunch, to do those types of things and to just block it and be like, no, I'm not available at this time, but I am here, 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 and here. And this is how we can integrate, you know, these distracting needs that you have during my workflows so that it works for me and it works for you. Because oftentimes they don't care. They just think, oh, well, it's all good. Like you could do it. And it's like, until you say otherwise, I mean, why would they think anything else? So
yeah,
you know,
that's a good point.
Taking on that responsibility to say.
Speaking of boundaries, so Tia comes in and says, I hear you on the bathroom breaks. Most days it's so hard to even get 2 minutes. How is that good for our mental health? And it's funny too, you should say that because a lot of people are telling me that that's a big thing right now in remote work. They are monitoring your bathroom breaks in remote work. Now, where's the boundary in that? I mean, come on, Mitch, you worked remotely, right?
not like that, man.
All right, you have 90 seconds to go to the bathroom and then back to work, okay?
Yeah, that's wild.
I can speak to this one because I was literally telling my therapist today that I think I have Teams PTSD. Like, because that Teams thing just flashes all the time and you have to be available. And I had a previous manager whenever I was at a CRO that would literally call me if I went red or if I went yellow for more than 5 minutes. And I'm like, you don't have anything better to do than to see. And I'm like, I'm sorry, I went to the bathroom or I was walking my dog or something like that. But it's so crazy. But that is so true that like, but and to tag along with that, we need to do better as an industry, right? That to tag that on with the previous comment, because if we are seeing, especially as managers, if we see that our teams like trip reports, for instance, this one drives me crazy. When people are fired for late trip reports, you're not asking them, are you overworked? You're not asking them why. What's going on in your life? Is there something that is going on? You're punishing them first instead of having to understand they're a human. And if that is not their typical behavior, I understand that some people, you know, there are just some really bad workers, but they are few and far between, I feel like, in this industry. This industry, we work so hard. So if people start slacking, it is probably not because they don't want to do a good job. It is probably because they are burnt out. And the fact that as managers and human resources and everything like that, the fact that we're punishing instead of having a conversation to say, hey, what's going on? Do you need help? This isn't like you? We have to be better. We are humans and we're not just numbers. And I feel like in this industry, we have been so bad about not taking that into consideration that really it's just our people are a means to an end. They're productivity engines. They're not humans. And then we're literally killing our clinical research professionals by not taking this into consideration.
Yeah, I mean, from that ClinOps side too, is, you know, we create this sense of, in this industry, we create this sense that we put on I know specifically for like the CRAs, right? And same thing really with study coordinators a lot of times. We put this overwhelming amount of burden on our research professionals, but they're also kind of made to feel like you're not allowed to speak up about it, right? You can't ask. And who do you go to when you feel overwhelmed? Because there's always this sense of like, well, I don't want to tell my manager that I feel like I have too much, because then it feels like I'm failing, right? And you don't want to lose your job. You're afraid to get fired because you're not good enough. And then a lot of times, even when I've seen or I've heard those cries for help, like I can't do it, I need support at this site, or we need more resources, they just tend to often go unanswered as well.
Mm-hmm.
Now, and so Jess, back to you, and I'm going to pull up a comment that reminds me of this, but have you ever been in a situation in the industry where you look at an employee who's like super bright-eyed and bushy-tailed, and you know to yourself, oh, they must be new because they're not burned out yet?
Mm-hmm.
Have you ever done that? It's like, oh, you have way too much pep in your step. You must not have been through enough to be around here too long. So again, LinkedIn user, I'm wondering, I think I know who this is, but so without a sense of purpose at work, in other words, like the ability to control, the ability to actually perform work and to accomplish things, people feel helpless. That helplessness is huge. It's hard to stay engaged when you feel like nothing you do makes a difference. And if employees feel like the work is too complex or there's just too much to do, they'll burn out. I resonate a lot with this because it gets to a point where you're like, you worked so hard, you wanted to make a change, you wanted to do a difference, and then you realize, oh my gosh, the system's just broken and I'm wasting my time. Then you just don't care anymore. Then you get burned out, and then you're like, whatever, I'm disgruntled. So that's kind of like the progression of how a lot of people go that I see in this industry. I wonder if you have, both of you, everyone, have you ever seen this happen? Like you literally see someone fresh and you're like, oh my gosh, oh girl, just wait, talk to me in 6 months and we'll see if you're that energetic.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah. Have
Yeah.
any stories?
Well, yeah, I mean, absolutely. You do see that where there's so much energy, and sometimes you're saying you need to pace yourself. Like, you need to pace yourself a little bit too, because it is hard, and it can become very, very intense. And if you don't pace yourself, if you don't think about things like boundaries and having to reset even during your day, you will be burned out, and you won't be smiling, and you won't be happy about this. So it's super, super, super important to really think about it holistically, so that you can put your own oxygen mask on first, because you're not any good to anybody if you're burned out.
Yeah, it's a marathon. It's definitely a marathon. Jess, have you ever seen even in your what you're going through now when you're training people, do you ever see people go through this journey?
It's so interesting because we actually had this conversation like 2 days ago of like time, because we always talk about, I think Mitch, we were talking about the iron triangle, where there has to be a balance between the scope, the budget, and the time and the quality of a project. And somebody asked me, okay, what do I do if they've given me something that is completely impossible and I've vocalized this and they're still not going to do anything about it? And they're like, I just feel so defeated. And for me, the first thing that came to mind for me was, how is this going to affect the quality of the project? How is this going to affect the quality of the way that we treat our patients? Because that study team is going into this project knowing it's going to fail because it is not feasible. Why are we wasting time, money, resources, patients' time, all of this for a project to just happen faster? But the drug's not going to make it to market because we can't operationalize it. So what are we doing? Why are we doing this? Why aren't we taking the time and listening to the subject matter experts in this to say, okay, no, this isn't going to work. And we're just burning out everybody, and people are exiting the industry. I mean, we had a huge outflux of clinical research professionals after like COVID vaccines and everything, because everybody was just so overworked. And the only people that were making the money were the CEOs. You know, it was just a wild time. And why are we doing that? Why are our patients not our number one stakeholders? That should be how it is in this industry. Our patients should be our number one stakeholders, not about making more money for companies and organizations. We should be thinking about the science and the health here. And that includes the health of our clinical research professionals too, not just about somebody being able to buy another mansion, which I feel like I talk about this all the time. And but we have to take care of our patients and our people.
Oh my gosh. And so Stephanie, this goes back to kind of what you were saying, but you were saying it doesn't make sense. Like, we just constantly have to do repeat work. We're keep doing it wrong. It's impossible for anyone to listen to us. So this industry's business model is very much compartmentalized. There's zero continuity between one trial to the next, because everything is its own little siloed contract. We all have to have our own little tech stack around this contract. We have to have our training, everything. It's like everything is its own little mini company. And you know how, like, when companies merge and they kind of like consolidate and do centralized administration or something like that, imagine companies merging and that not happening, the consolidation not happening. So now you've got like 42 HR organizations, 42 tech companies, and then 42 ClinOps people running around all trying to do their own thing. That's what it feels like for a single trial. And then when you multiply that by the numerous trials that we have, you have zero continuity in the processes themselves. So, I mean, do you find that could be some source or root cause of burnout for our professionals?
Absolutely. Especially also when you're dealing with business development people that are like trying to shotgun spray you with as many clinical trials as you could possibly do. And, they get really ticked off at me as a clinician, where I'm like, okay, you need to think of this from the standpoint of patient cohorts, and your, physicians and providers that way too. And, when you're screening patients, and of course, in a clinic situation, we've had patients that will, that have participated in clinical trials with us for like 10 years, and it might be something like COPD or IPF or whatever the case may be. Well, those patients, and oftentimes they'll call, like, when they've been on a trial and then, they've come off of it, and they'll call back and be like, oh, do you have anything else that might help me? And to have those patients, organized in cohorts, and to have trials available that, if you have a lot of COPD patients, have 4 or 5 COPD studies so that you have something for everyone. But a lot of times they're like, oh, how about this CKD trial, and how about, this COPD, and let's see if we could throw an STD trial in there, and maybe a COVID and flu. And you're like, okay, how do I operationalize this? And, to have coordinators that are working with, one group of physicians, or screening one set of reports, they're all over the place. And when it starts to get easy, which I would explain to the staff, I'm like, okay, you need to work really closely with your docs, and and they'll send you patients before you can even screen them. Or you have patients that call you. Now all of a sudden you have this positive feedback loop. But if you are scattered and you are having to screen and then take care of patients, and you're jumping all over the place, you're not going to get traction. That's demoralizing. That burns you out. And then to yield the same amount of patients, because everything comes down to metrics, it's going to be a lot harder. So, I think that that's a really important aspect that a lot of people don't think about, is how do you approach this, from a patient standpoint, from a provider standpoint, so that there's cohesiveness with what you're doing and what you're treating, and how you're supporting, this clinical aspect. Or we do a lot with population health too, to just provide better care. I mean, isn't that the whole purpose of research? Is that we're trying to find better treatments and better diagnostics? It's like, why? I mean, why is that concept oftentimes not integrated into how we're approaching it on top of everything else?
Yeah,
to grow. Year. No, go ahead, Mitch.
I was gonna say all year. That's what I've been stressing and pushing. It's like this nonstop ICH E8 quality by design. Like that's where that needs to happen. Can't stress it enough.
And to quote the great Dan Otap, we are literally here to make sick people feel better, not at the cost of our sickness. And again, so Tia is on fire over here. She goes, Abbot doesn't inspire anyone. Let's say it out louder for the people in the back. Thank you so much, Tia. I agree completely. I did want to give Jess a chance to comment on the whole concept of compartmentalized non-continuity in the industry and what that might do for burnout.
Oh my gosh. I mean, it's so if you've ever looked at like multitasking, right? The science behind multitasking and what that does to your brain. That's literally everybody's life in clinical research, right? From protocols to, all the different vendor solutions, all the different tech solutions, all literally from emails to phone calls to there's just so much that we're always jumping back and forth. And multitasking just does not work. And that, of course, stresses you out. It puts you in fight or flight. It just continues to, make the problem so much worse. Yeah, I mean, and I don't know what the solution is. A lot of people have asked, like, okay, what do you do then? I don't know. Like, what are we at a point where we can even make a solution? Because we're almost too far gone with all the different tech solution providers and increased data points and all of this kind of stuff. Where do we start to fix it? I don't know, because, I feel like COVID really helped in some ways with like the being more streamlined together and working towards solutions together. And, even them sharing protocols and everything was huge. But why don't we keep doing that? We saw how fast a vaccine was developed in order to stop a global pandemic. Why can't pharmaceutical companies and organizations come together and say, this is what worked for us. These are our lessons learned. This is, what we found from the data, because if everybody is truly in this for the right reasons, we're all here to make sick people healthy. So why is the priority instead making money whenever we could just be sharing and advancing science and getting these life-saving drugs, devices, whatever, to market if we just collaborated more? Not everything is a competition. We can collaborate in this industry. There's enough work and money around for everybody to, get what they need, but we just have to work together.
Yeah, well, to that point too, we can't do all of it. Not every sponsor is in every therapeutic area. So the concept of competition for a lot of them doesn't even necessarily exist.
Right. And if we learned anything from COVID, it's that clinical research is literally a global security risk if we do not do it properly. I think, and we really cannot forget that. I don't know where you were when COVID hit, but I was sitting there twiddling my thumbs for 6 weeks wondering, what are we supposed to do? There was no leadership, no guidance. We were just sitting here like waiting for instruction. That was 6 weeks we could have actually acted on things. So I think even if that's the one lesson we learned, it's how important research is. Excuse me, Stephanie. This is perfect. So I've been wanting to know, how is Link doing as far as a solution to try to help with this?
So Lido Link is progressing. We've done a lot more piloting and kind of built out some of our features. And again, this is, so what Lido is it's essentially a platform that organizes the tool set. It doesn't replace any of the tools, because as we all know, you get what you get when the sponsor gives it to you. And in startup as well, is you end up with like 1 million emails and documents everywhere. And so we worked on creating reproducible workflows where everything can be in one place. And so that if you have people that turn over, whether it's on your side or on the sponsor side, because a lot of times that's kind of how they'll train a CRA, is they'll be like, okay, you could support this the study with the startup, and then as we train you, we'll send you out in the field. So during your startup period, you may have a whole bunch of different, CRAs and startup because they're doing their training block and they still work for the company, but they're no longer on your project. So it's like, how can we do this? How can we bring those things together? So our platform does that and allows for, electronic signatures for you to be able to track that, and to be able to send it out, because otherwise what ends up happening with your docs is you end up with stacks and stacks and stacks of paper. And, they may be at different clinics. Some of our pulmonologists are also ICU docs. So, to have a folder sitting on top of their desk for when they come back, might get lost and it may not happen in real time. So, how can you alleviate that? And, one of the things that the industry has finally done is the electronic signature aspect of it is becoming so much better. So how is it that you can organize those things? So that is progressing. And thank you so much for asking, Dr. Fox.
I was wondering, and I have to say, so I mean, surely nobody on this call knows any hands-off PI that just hands their passwords over to the coordinators, right? I mean, that just doesn't happen ever, right, Mitch?
Man, we can't get into it.
Yeah, no, I mean, it's a problem. And that's essentially kind of what this allows for, is that, because you have everything at your fingertips and, you can use a biometric or, you can password manage. It's all in one place. So it decreases the likelihood that would be something that would happen. And of course, have a lot of colleagues in this space, and you have site networks that come in, and, there was a manager at one of the site networks that was, removed from me, but I knew them on a personal level, and this person decided that they were going to keep everybody's passwords and do everybody, and it's like, and of course they actually ended up getting caught and actually got a 483 for it. And it's like, you can see how easy that would be to happen, because it's so out of control. So what are some of the things that you can do to alleviate the need for that? I mean, if you think about, and of course, this is kind of how Link is set up. It's kind of like, your apps on your phone. I mean, how often I don't know about you, but it seems like I've got hundreds of apps on my phone. I've never had to have somebody else, keep my password or log in for me. I mean, it's just
or give you 12 hours of training for it.
Yeah. So to have a product, which of course is our focus, is to be able to do that, because those types of things burn you out. You're having to multitask all the time. It's like, okay, where do I find the password? Where do I find that platform that I need to log into? With our complex trials, we have 10 to 15 different vendors per trial. And then if you're running like 15 trials, it just gets ridiculous.
So
maybe your friend was using the lizard brain to make that decision to share passwords.
Probably, because it's kind of the lowest common denominator. It's like, if I can give it to somebody else to do it, then I will. But it's like, that's a problem, because you're not supposed to be sharing it.
Hadi, you're going to say something?
No, I was just going to say, so the question becomes, how do we make things simpler, easier, more fun? I mean, we go back to the same square one when Jess mentioned about the job description. That's ridiculous. I mean, really, can we be more vocal with recruiters and companies? It's like, get real. It's like, who can do all these things really in real life for one job?
So there's two comments I want to throw out real quick here. Schedule energy, not time. It goes back to that spoon thing. Amazing. I'm gonna write that down. Like, that's gonna be a new mantra. Might get it tattooed. We'll see. And then to follow that, one look at an email can rob you 15 minutes of focus. One call on your cell phone, one tweet, instant message, destroying your schedule, forcing you to move meetings, blow off the important things like love, friendship, family, etc. Right? Absolutely. And it just further worsens all of it. Because when we talked about like scheduling, that's why I like this aspect of scheduling energy, not time. But it's when you do have that schedule, when you schedule your days and you schedule things. But working clinical research, it's hard. Stuff comes up. and there's emergencies for other people, and you have to be able to handle those. Stephanie, you said it really well from like that PI perspective, right? You know, as the physician, it's like, look, you guys don't understand it. While shotgunning you trials from biz dev, they don't understand that need, that time gap that it actually takes to conduct everything, and maybe all those little steps in between. They just see like one aspect and not the full picture necessarily that you're looking at. But it's being like you were, essentially, like, yes, we're all like, I know I'm an Enneagram too. I just took a test a couple weeks ago. But it's like, we're all passionate. We want to help everybody, but you do have to be unapologetically selfish in that sense to be able to take care of yourself before you can help others.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And the comment about the email, you know, one email can rob you of 15 minutes. And, you know, biz dev that doesn't, you know, when you have people that don't understand the clinical, it's like, but they're sending you things and they need to know by the end of the day if it's something that they could do. And, you know, and they don't know the difference between, you know, ARDS and COPD. It's like they send you a study. It's like, we're in a clinic, and ARDS is, you know, acute respiratory distress. These patients are either on a vent or soon to be on a vent. You know, they send you these inclusion exclusion criteria with, oh, patient can't be on a ventilator for longer than a week. Do you think, just high level, that this is something that we could be doing in a clinic? We don't have any patients on ventilators in a clinic. They're in an ICU. Why are you sending me this?
Or is it even someone, or is it just a bot? That's the other thing, is you may be fighting bots.
Well, actually, this is a human, and so I, you know, spoke with her and was like, we need to like think about these trials, you know, from a clinical standpoint. And because it does. I mean, if you have to stop and switch gears constantly, you know, and they're bugging you and they're instant messaging you, I need a response. I need you to look at this. I need to know, you know, and a lot of times it's just easier to just say, no, you know, we don't have the patient population, and you don't even look at it, because it's like, you can't be robbed of that 15 minutes at that particular time.
So I developed a more comprehensive understanding of that time, like with emails, when I was going through the process of adopting my son, and we had to go through an attorney, and they charge you a substantial amount of time per email. And it's like, okay, I'm not going to fire you off a question right now. I'm going to write down my questions throughout the next few days, and then I'm going to send you one email with everything on it. And I've tried to carry that over into, you know, the research industry too. Instead of like, when one thing comes up and, oh, I'm going to call the site right now and ask them, you know, I'll call the coordinator, I'll send her a text because we have a great rapport. But I know I'm not the only priority. I know I'm not a priority probably at all. But it's taking, I think, one thing we can probably all do is take the time to be more intentional, be comprehensive with our thoughts and our emails, put it all together, get it all asked at once, and not just like firestorm off emails constantly. That would be great.
And what a great learning experience. An attorney is wonderful at doing that, where it's like, okay, that's going to cost you 30 minutes of my time. When you could get 5 questions answered in 30 minutes if you put it all in one email. Otherwise, I'm going to charge you 30 minutes each. But it's
I wonder if we can get the budgets to pay for that. You think we can get sponsors to pay for that? Like that
would be great.
Wouldn't
But
that be amazing?
Yeah, I think that's an SOP waiting to happen.
I mean, that sounds good to me.
So we'll see.
All right, we are at the hour, so we're going to go ahead and wrap it up. And honestly, we could talk about this an entire series. And as a result, I would recommend you check out another podcast series. It's literally called Rekindle XM, a podcast designed and dedicated to this topic, burnout. Rekindle also has a book coming out next year. I highly recommend you check them out. I think that we can make a lot of friends with that group. So maybe we'll have a mashup sometime. So if Rekindle, if you're watching, I would love to have a mashup. Let's talk about that. But let's go ahead and wrap it up for the day. So crew, Fox and friends, if I were to hand you the microphone right now and I said, what would you like to tell the entire audience about burnout, how you feel about it, and what we can do to fix it, what would you tell them? Let's start with our friend Hadi.
You come first. take care of yourself before taking care of others. As Stephanie said, get your own oxygen first.
Perfect. Mitch?
Yeah, it's going to be I can't answer all of those. I don't think anybody can necessarily, but it's unique to all of us. But my biggest probably takeaway was going to be touch grass. That's all I can say. As like Cowboy Mitch today, it's going to be touch grass. Get out there, recharge your batteries, get some sun, just ground yourself some way.
Mm-hmm. Good. Stephanie?
Reset, and as often as you can. So even if it's as simple as taking 5 seconds in between patients, or if you're taking, a walk down the hall to go to the bathroom, whatever, but the stop, breathe, be. Just taking that 1 second to say that in your head, and just the reset.
Jess?
I would say talk about it. It's terrifying to put it out there and talk about it. The first time I kind of started to on LinkedIn, it was scary. And, but I've also found so much healing in having conversations with others, and also recognizing that I'm not alone. And being that safe space for people that need to have those conversations. Talk about it. Everybody's going through something. We all have mental health. It's not rare. We are all high performing type A people in this industry that we're literally just destined for burnout based on our personality types. So talk about it and ask your friends if they're okay, and be honest. And if they say they're not, or if they just say they're fine, reach deeper. Say, talk to me a little bit more about that. Take care of each other.
Yeah, I do want to add to that a little bit, because it was actually Addison Gumbert who said something to me a few weeks ago. She was like, "How are you doing?" And don't give me an okay. Don't give me a fine. Like, elaborate.
So it's interesting, because I agree. In an industry that can literally suck your entire soul, you have to put up a guard. You have to have armor. You have to be selfish. But at the same time, it's ironic because you also have to be empathetic. So if we were selfish to ourselves and we protected ourselves, but we were also understanding and empathetic to others on, going and walking in their shoes, then we might be able to at least have a little understanding about someone else's burnout and protect ourselves from burnout. It's a two-way street. And then I also resonate with Jess. You are never alone unless you choose to be. Mm-hmm. And that's one of the big things that have gotten me through many, many things. Mm-hmm. All right. We are at the top of the hour. Thank you so much to everyone for watching now and in the future. This is CRPN Central. Please consider to like, comment, subscribe. It helps the mission a ton. We love you guys so much. Mm-hmm. Please take care. If you need anything, if you're feeling burned out, I can almost guarantee you I would be happy to take a message from you. And I'll bet you Jess, Stephanie, everyone on this screen is here. We both have 2 ears and our brains are working. So we'll see you all next time.
Bye. Thank you.
Bye, everyone.